Welcome back to Inside Criminal Mind, the series that analyzes the actions of an elite BAU team. If you are new to the series, there's a link in the description down below to catch you up. This episode begins with a man building bombs, kind of like,
Oh, these aren't homemade. They were made in a factory. A bomb factory. They're bombs.
but he also calls local and national news outlets to warn them of an attack as he boards a bus. Meanwhile, JJ storms into Hotch's office, completely ignoring Reed, which is kind of sad, but it's due to the calls the unsub was making. And Hotch gathers the team in order to determine the validity of the threats. And unfortunately, they can only wait until the attack happens. Also, Garcia got a few of the news outlets to trap and trace. A bit unorthodox, to say the least, especially since news stations don't normally allow this, but
Who could say no to me?
also due to the team's assessment, they know it's real. As they discuss, the bomber sets up his trap and blows a bus sky high, proving to the team this is even more legit than before. The team land, and after light jokes, the detective on duty speaks with the team about how minimal the carnage actually was. And Hodge brings up the fact that the positions of the passengers will actually be significant. Also, when Gideon gets on the bus, we get a flash of PTSD, possibly from Adrian Bale from the first season. However, this isn't the first time Gideon gets these visions. As that's happening, the team further discuss the bomb and, most importantly, the trigger system, a rare time that Criminal Minds links with Burn Notice. Anyway, Gideon knows how to push the unsub's buttons by enticing him to call the tip line, lying about not even knowing if the explosion is linked to a bomb or an accident. Meanwhile, Reed and Morgan are discussing the bombs, and Morgan explains RC to Reed, even though Reed most likely has read books on this stuff, but I mean, at least he looks interested. And in this episode, we learn that Morgan used to be in the bomb squad, which could have been his connection with the FBI, because at least one of the classes involved deals with the FBI. However, there is another bomb tech that seems to be taking the reins and recreates the bomb almost perfectly, and finds an interesting engraving on the bottom of one of the pipes. A robot with an arrow through it. Also, the bomb was created using dry peas, meaning the unsub was probably attempting to only kill 1 to maybe 2 people. But that engraving points to possibly the unsub being anti-technology. This is when Morgan contacts Garcia to see if there had been any recent terrorist attacks near this bombing in the past few months. And she finds possibly this unsub attacking computers. Also, Morgan and Garcia flirt, obviously. Also, Garcia finds someone who blew up computers with floppy disks. Floppy disks? Floppy disks? This episode was made in 2006. Even then, it seemed floppy disks were going out of style. I mean, thumb drives had been around for at least 7 years, and at the time, people were using CDs and DVD writers. Anyway, the irony isn't lost on Garcia. This was just the best way to deliver the payload and using something that is a little bit more obscure. He also dropped a note that depicts the FFT brigade and the same picture depicted on the bomb case. With this last clue, this gives the team all they need to deliver a profile, but while they are delivering it, the unsub calls looking for specifically Gideon, and right away the unsub is extremely angry, and Gideon pries for the unsub's name, and reluctantly he gives the name Allegro, which I mean sounds a lot like a pharmaceutical for allergies. But he then firebombs a gas station, where thankfully nobody got hurt. And when the team arrive, Gideon scans the area and finds a payphone that could be the one he used. And after a little bit of combing the area, they find a box with the unsub's manifesto in it.
What is this?
It's me manifesto.
With a picture of the robot again. And finally, when Gideon reveals the name of the unsub, Reed connects it to a book he read, Empty Planet.
It's called Empty Planet by one-hit wonder author David Hansbury.
He said it! He said it!
However, the plot of the book sounds a lot like The Terminator, but more in the eyes of Kyle Reese versus John Connor. The connection to Empty Planet leads the team to figuring out that one of the guys on the bus, Dr. Cook, is responsible for advancements in robotics and could possibly be the actual target. So they bring him in to question him, and turns out he knows the author of Empty Planet, who is not only in the city, but also a professor, coincidentally at the same place the floppy disks were sent. And Gideon attempts to reason with Dr. Cook, but he refuses help because he doesn't want to be followed by the suits and sunglasses brigade. Also, I find it hilarious when Dr. Cook tries to outsmart Gideon.
A cognitive scientist at MIT once said, "Coincidences seem to be the source for some of our greatest irrationalities."
Our minds see coincidences and seek out...
I understood him.
Also, Gideon appeals to Morgan.
You ever talk to someone who wants to continually show you he's smarter than you?
Every day.
I really hate that.
And this is when Morgan tells them that they can go see the author at any time, and Reed wants to read Empty Planet before meeting with the author, which should only take about 10 minutes.
Buy it or read it?
Both, actually.
Gideon, against Cook's wishes, sets up a protection on Cook, but that doesn't go well because the unsub gets to him first, and they figure out that the bomb was a pressure sensor as the trigger. Allegro then calls Gideon to warn about the coming attacks and slips up by telling Gideon where he wants the manifesto printed, meaning someone in this area is very important to him. Again, points to Gideon being the best profiler. Hodge then calls Gideon to tell him about a bomb placed, and even though Reed wants to help, Gideon knows their best chance of catching the unsub is interviewing the author. They go on to explain to the author that people are unpredictable when reading books, that even though she didn't mean for it, it became a call to action for this unsub. And Gideon reveals that her friend Dr. Cook was murdered earlier. Meanwhile, Hotch, Morgan, and the bomb squad are running around defusing bombs. Back at the author's office, Reed discovers the symbol for the FFT brigade is hanging around her neck, meaning this unsub was probably in her class. Pressing Gideon to get the author to read the manifesto to see if she can recognize his work. Let's just hope she can read as fast as Reed can.
No one reads as fast as Reed.
Yes, absolutely. But Morgan calls Gideon and informs him that the unsub is pissing him off, and rightfully so, and the targets don't make sense for this unsub. Nothing technological. It seems as though the unsub is just trying to waste the FBI's time. This prompts Gideon to read the author's syllabus and find that Dr. Cook and another Dr. Brazier speak at the author's classes. So Gideon informs Morgan that they could have another potential victim. And fortunately, they get to her before the bomb goes off. Unfortunately, she has triggered the bomb due to Morgan finding the bomb under her seat. The bomb squad shows up to assist getting rid of the device by adding a weight onto the pressure sensor, and Morgan decides on not leaving the potential victim's side, showing just how stubborn and amazing Morgan can be. He even disregards a direct order from Hotch. This is an amazing character development for Morgan. This really shows how he deals with a very stressful situation. Meanwhile, the author can't find any correlation to a student's work. Also, Gideon references Morgan as a man he greatly respects and admires, showing how high of a regard Gideon pays to Morgan. Luckily, the bomb tech is able to remove the bomb safely, and she and Morgan are safe. However, Gideon still orders the car to be blown up in order to keep the potential victim safe from a future attack. As Reed and Gideon leave, they instruct her to keep looking at the file and hopes one thing jumps out. to her. Reed is curious as to why she never wrote anything else, and she remarks that it's the only story she really wanted to tell. And due to her demeanor about this, it seems this story was very personal to her. And after they leave, she realizes who the unsub may possibly be. Meanwhile, Reed discusses the plot of Empty Planet, and Gideon deduces the author is the main target after all, which we find out to be true when the unsub arrives at the office of the author, and the unsub incorrectly identifies her as his mother. This is where he holds her hostage. However, the team is on their way to attempt to save her. While the unsub explains his story and how he believes he is her son, thankfully the FBI shows up in order to save her. This is where she reveals that she gave up a daughter, so it's impossible for the unsub to be the child the author gave up. When the FBI create a standoff, the author sees he is possibly going to get shot, and so she flings herself in front of the bullet, and Gideon stays with her in order to try to keep her alive and awake. On the jet as they leave, Reed, JJ, and Hotch are playing cards, and JJ wins, but not before she unequivocally says she will never go to Comic-Con, which is a real shame. Comic-Cons are fun. Then Morgan confronts Gideon about what was said in the author's office. Gideon says Morgan was stupid, but also right. This episode did a good job of propelling Morgan and Gideon's character with a dash of Reed thrown in. This unsub was smart, but also kind of stupid. If I learned anything from watching Burn Notice, it's if you are going to take somebody hostage, always use a dead man switch. But at least the unsub wasn't just crazy, he was also committed to a cause. The Morgan and Gideon relationship is strengthened due to that last scene and how much Morgan is dedicated to his job. But to be completely frank, once Morgan refused to leave, we as the audience know that the victim is going to be safe because the show wouldn't let a main character die due to this unsub because of the fact that he was kind of a one and done unsub. It would have been a very unceremonious death. It is also funny that Gideon compares Dr. Cook with Reed and Morgan and their relationship. Also, good attention to detail because on the bus you can actually see Dr. Cook in the background. But all in all, this was a very good episode at challenging the team. Thanks for watching. If you were curious to see what happens when a spy gets fired, check out my other series, Burned Notice. Link in the description. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe.